In this video, I will talk about how I manage places in Gramps. Gramps allows for a hierarchy of places, so you can say that a building is enclosed by a street, which is enclosed by a town, which can be enclosed by a district or authority or county, which is enclosed by a country. What makes this special is that you can change what place something is part of over time. So you could say that until 1974, Blackburn was part of Blackburn County Borough. Then it became part of Blackburn with Darwen Borough until 1998, and then it became Blackburn with Darwen Unity Authority after 1998. This allows for places to move between different administrative areas as and when needed. Of course, often the first challenge when dealing with historical records is finding out exactly where the place mentioned actually is. Often, older properties have been destroyed, sometimes even whole streets. Sometimes properties have been renumbered or changed names. The first thing I often do is just to put the address into Google Maps and see what comes up. Maybe it still exists. Always worth a look on Street View as well, just to make sure that the age of the building is consistent and that Google has found the correct property. From there, we can save the lat long of the building. Also worth checking out OpenStreetMap too to see if it's there. For streets, I tend to get the lat long of the centre of the street and use that. And for towns, I just pick some point in the town centre. I don't tend to bother with lat longs for counties or districts, but I will for countries, normally just using what's in Wikipedia. But what about when we can't find the building on modern maps? We should probably look on maps that are contemporary to our source, or at least older than today. Where can we find these? For the UK at least, the National Library of Scotland has a very comprehensive set of maps, with particularly detailed maps from the late 19th century until the 1970s. Perfect for UK censuses. Of particular use are the 25-inch OS maps for the start of the 20th century, and the OS 1 to 2500 maps for the mid-20th century, and even 1 to 1250 if you're lucky. The latter also contain house numbers. Town plans are also available for the central areas of most UK towns around the turn of the century. There's also the ability to search for names on the 6-inch map, useful if you don't know where in a town a particular street is. Once a particular town or village has been added, I like to enclose it within the relevant local authority. Within England, that is to say an urban or rural sanitary district from 1875 until 1894, urban and rural districts from 1894 until 1974, and district councils and unitary authorities from 1974. Other systems exist elsewhere. Also, we like to reflect boundary changes over time. Within the UK, there's a wonderful website called A Vision of Britain Through Time, which is very useful for getting this information. If something's unclear or outside of the UK, there is also Wikipedia, which often has similar information. In this example, we can see that a single village, Askham in Furness, shows as being part of different districts and counties over time, moving from Lancashire to Cumbria after 1974. For another example, I want to search for 43 Wrigley Street, Oldham. First thing I'll do is try and put it into Google Maps. Let's see what we get. Well, here we can see from the street view image that the area looks industrialised. We stick the satellite on, it looks the same. Let's have a jump in. We can see that, come back. We can see that there's lots of industrial buildings but not many houses. So maybe it used to be residential and has now been converted. What we can do is if we get out the National Library of Scotland maps, we can have a look and see what it used to look like. So what we want to do is we want to scroll down and find georeferenced maps. We're going to zoom into Oldham, which is around here somewhere, and then we're going to try and find Wrigley Street. Here's Wrigley Street. Now what's interesting here is that this doesn't look like the industrial area that we now have. So clearly something has changed. Let's have a look at the 25-inch map. Well, look at this. These look like houses. Annoyingly, it looks like we're missing some of the map here. But hopefully we can work around it. What we can do is let's try and zoom in a bit more. Let's have a look at the 1 to 1250 or 1 to 2500 maps. Let's see what we get here. Well, now we've got house numbers, and here is the 43 that we were looking for. We can get the lat long of this location by moving our mouse over it and then having a look in the bottom right corner. There we can see the lat long that we need to use, and we can type that into Gramps. One final limitation to point out is that we can't change the type of the place over time. For example, rather than looking at this building here, we might look at the town itself, and maybe this town it has now become a city, or maybe it used to be a village, but we can't do that. There's a lot of places, for example, that can become a city by declaration from the monarch. We can't really encode that in Gramps because the type is fixed throughout the life of that place. But that's just one limitation that we can just have to live with. It means you just have to be slightly inaccurate with what you have here.